Hello friends, today's question is, as a Scrum Master, what is your role in a sprint planning? Friends, I want you to divide this answer into three parts. Scrum Master role before planning, during planning, and after sprint planning. Bye, have a nice day.
Hi all, this is Kirti here, and today's question is, what is the role of a Scrum Master in the sprint planning meeting, before the sprint planning, during the sprint planning, and after the sprint planning? So the first thing I would like to say before sprint planning is basically to have the team focus on a sprint goal which they are going to achieve. So this is the objective of the sprint sprint planning meeting. So the first thing I would like to say is that there are a lot of information which the Scrum Master needs to gather before the sprint planning meeting so that it is transparent. For an example, the capacity details, the velocity details, if the required user stories which teams are going to discuss, do we have enough skills in the team to discuss it, or do we need to have somebody from outside to be involved in the sprint planning meeting? These are the few documents or the few areas which we need to highlight, but the most important thing is how do we create an environment where people can actually practice the Scrum values and discuss the things out themselves. Like if PO wants to challenge estimation given by the development team member, how do they do it without hesitant? Or if development team member is not able to understand anything, does he have the courage enough to speak it out in the sprint planning meeting and ask relevant questions? So all these things are more important than any kind of information, because then the true objective of the sprint planning meeting can be achieved. So the initial few things which we need to keep in mind is the velocity, the capacity, so that to know how much we can plan. The user stories, are they refined enough? Are they meeting the definition of are ready? Do we have enough? Do we have to schedule some proper venue where people can actually, now it's COVID, it's remote, but do we have the schedule in place where everybody who is relevant can join in the meeting? So these are the before prerequisites. During the sprint planning meeting, the environment creation is the most important thing. The other thing is talking about the agenda, then deriving the sprint goal, then refining the preparing the sprint backlog, and refining the items again and again, and rederiving the sprint goal again. So all these things are important, and then quickly discussing the definition of done by the development team member. The PO shares the vision of the product and the items which we need to cover in this particular sprint. So all these things which are agenda, then deriving the sprint goal, then refining the preparing the sprint backlog, and refining the items again and again, and rederiving the sprint goal again. So all these things are important, and then quickly discussing the definition of done by the development team member. The PO shares the vision of the product and the items which we need to cover in this particular sprint. So all these things which are information sharing, which is very important for the collaboration for the team to work. So the next thing is the retrospective details which we have got. Are we discussing what items we need to pick in the sprint backlog? So that is a very important factor, because otherwise we're going to repeat the same issues which we've got in earlier sprint if we don't rectify anything in this sprint. So these are the 3-4 things. Then what else is fine? Then revisiting the sprint goal, that's it. The next thing is we would like to talk about is after the sprint planning, are we achieving it, or how to make information more and more visible to the development team to realize whether they are achieving towards the sprint goal or not. For an example, if we are following the burn down charts in our organization, then how do we read those metrics? Because it is very important to plot a graph, but is it actually, it is important to read it properly, to analyze it, to understand it, if we are achieving towards a sprint goal or not. Also the issues in our team, which needs to be like, for an example, if somebody is very much cherry picking, if cherry picking is happening, or if somebody is not very comfortable or shy in talking in sprint planning meeting, so all those things, or during the sprint, so all those dysfunctions we need to cater, so that the team gets more and more comfortable, and they actually collaborate and live the scrum values to get the maximum result. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amit. Presenting in response to today's question, which is what Scrum Master is supposed to do before the sprint planning meeting, during the sprint planning meeting, and after. Let's start with before. So before, Scrum Master is supposed to reach out to you to understand which user stories would be considered as high priority user stories, which would then be considered for the development for this upcoming sprint. He would have to ensure, Scrum Master would have to ensure that the PO has enough detailed information, so that any questions which might be asked during the discussion with the developers, he has enough information so that he can make the discussion go ahead moving. Next is two very important points that Scrum Master must do prior to the meeting. Sprint planning meeting. First is reflect and work upon the points which were lessons learned from prior sprint planning. So there can be some disturbances, there can be some good points, there can be something which were missing. So all these points need to be considered for this upcoming sprint planning meeting, so that we can improve upon it. We need to understand the stakeholder feedback, which we have to consider for this sprint, and then work as per that. Another very important point is Scrum Master needs to be ready with the capacity of the team for this sprint. So capacity would have to be considered, capacity would have to be calculated considering the planned vacations, any meetings that are going to happen throughout the sprint, any planned meetings I should add. Not everyone would be productive 100% of the time. So he would have to consider, let's say, on an average 75% time of each person, and then calculate the capacity for all the team members. Post that, he would have to also share the average velocity from past 5 to 6 sprints, so that team knows till what number, from the estimation point of view, till what number they can pick the sprints, these user stories, more or less around that velocity number, but below that capacity. So we are in good threshold basically. Last and least thing, publish the agenda with all these information. The user stories are being considered, the capacity numbers, the velocity numbers, any planned vacations for the team members. All this information would help the team members during the discussion itself. How will see? So during the discussion, there are apart from members, all this information would help the team members during the discussion itself. How will see? So during the discussion, there are apart from Scrum Master, there are two more accountabilities, which is PO and developers. So PO is supposed to have why and what. Why he needs to have what we are trying to build with this sprint. What are the prioritized user stories? So developers, during the discussion of that user stories, the discussion, whatever, they are supposed to have, they will form a plan on what how it would be built up. So there are very finer detailed points that should be considered. However, one thing should be noted here: Scrum Master is not having that primary responsibility for many of these points that I'm about to share. But if in case developers forget, if in case PO forgets, it's Scrum Master responsibility to bring them back to the topic of discussion. Maybe point out what all things missed out, and we need to discuss and reflect upon. So, of course, Scrum Master is going to present up prioritized user stories. Developers are supposed to ask questions, get clarification. They also need to understand for each and every user story what is the acceptance criteria, how the user stories would be accepted or marked as done when they are given to the product owner, or when they are presenting to the product owner and stakeholders for review in our sprint review meetings. They also need to understand and share the assumptions that they are considering, or that they foresee They also need to understand the dependencies, if any. If there are any dependent sprint story user stories, they need to point in this discussion, or if the dependency is such and so that it needs to go back to the backlog, then it needs to be informed during this discussion itself. We need to discuss any new information which is being uncovered during this whole discussion, any complexity, any more further assumption, or any dependency, or any important point that needs to be considered while planning this thing. It is expected that for the prior refinement or grooming, the estimation would have been done. If not, this would be last event where estimation or re-estimation can be done. Last two things is they would have to review the definition of done, or make changes to DOD for the sprint, because this is going to be the last point when we have to notify the product owner if there are any critical changes in the DOD. If there are any critical changes, he needs to be notified upfront during this event itself. This is going to be the last point when we have to notify the product owner if there are any critical changes in the DOD. If there are any critical changes, he needs to be notified upfront during this event itself. Once everything is done, we confirm and record all the issues in our project management tool, which is generally Jira or whatever you're using in your application. Before we close up, we would have to present the velocity again, reflect upon the number of user stories picked up, the total estimate of those user stories, and take approval from both parties mandatorily, from the PO and the developer, and take a consensus how confident we are to do this. If there are any last minute points, if someone needs to speak up, if someone has not shared their thoughts on any particular point, this would be the time to do so. Once everything is done, we can close the meeting. After the meeting, Scrum Master, if the stories are not updated in the Jira, Scrum Master would have to update that in the Jira, start the sprint already, and publish the moms and whatever important critical points put in, maybe attendees as well. So this would be the response for what a Scrum Master would have to do prior, during, and after the sprint planning meeting. Thank you. Bye.
Hi all, Jagdish here. So today's question was, what is role of Scrum Master in sprint planning? Also elaborate his role, her role before sprint planning, during sprint planning, and after the planning meeting. So what is sprint planning? It is one of the most important ceremonies of Scrum. It held on the day one of the sprint. Also, it is facilitated by the Scrum Master, and product owner gives the priority detail of the product backlog, and provide more details on the queries that dev team have about it, and the dev team gets their understanding clear on the priorities, the work, and any dependency or any other details. Coming to the question, like what does the Scrum Master do before sprint planning? So Scrum Master understand the priorities of product backlog that is defined, and pass it on to the dev team. Apart from this, calculate capability depending on the leaves and the holiday that comes in the sprint, and then depending on the previous sprints, previous 4 or 5 sprints, calculate the velocity, so that there is more clarity on what can be covered in the current sprint. Also implement what are the outcome of retrospective that we had in the previous sprint. That's what a Scrum Master do before the sprint. So coming to the next point, that is during the sprint. So sprint planning meeting is facilitated by the Scrum Master, where he makes sure that all the team members from the dev team are available for it. Also, the product owner is there. Secondly, all the queries regarding the use stories are cleared and there is no ambiguity or any pending thing with it, so that development team can start working on it. Also, and the next thing would be whatever the sprint backlog is created. It is not less than or more than the defined velocity, so that to avoid the spillovers. Finally, coming to the last point, uh, after sprint planning is done, all the summary of sprint planning, like the goals committed, the sprint backlog, the capabilities, and the velocity defined are published. And also, the sprint board is updated with the sprint backlog that we have agreed upon, and any spillovers from the previous sprints. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi all. So today's topic is on sprint planning. What is Scrum Master's role before, during, and after sprint planning? So before sprint planning, as a Scrum Master, we should make sure enough stories have been prioritized and it has been groomed with all necessary data needed for the developers to complete it, and also make sure the capacity is ready for the sprint, and make sure the bandwidth will be occupied with the groomed user stories. So we should make sure at least the user stories are groomed enough for next two sprints, so that we will not be in it will not blocking us for waiting for any further user stories that has to be added to the sprint. So during sprint planning, Scrum Master facilitates the sprint planning meeting, and the sprint planning is one of the first ceremony that happens during the sprint. So Scrum Master makes sure all the stories have been clearly explained and groomed for the developers, and make sure the stories which have been taken up is marked as committed, and mutually which is understood mutually between the product owner and also with the developers, and make sure the stories have been assigned to the story owner, and also have the list of necessary tasks that are required to complete the story, and have the estimate effort hours for the tasks that are created for the tasks respective for the respective user stories. So further to that, he also have to make sure developers have clear understanding of the user stories, and they are not over allocating themselves with the stories. So it should be enough for the team members to commit within the sprint, and it shouldn't be over committing. So Scrum Master should keep an check on that during the sprint planning meeting. After sprint planning, Scrum Master have to make sure he circulates the sprint planning notes to the team members and also to the product owner, and sit up with developers, have a discussion, and discuss, come up with some criteria and some plan on how to complete the committed stories, and also make sure team is they are not going to have any hurdles on handling the stories, and if there is any such, he should get involved and make sure it is resolved for the team members. It is not stopping them to reach their goal. And also during sprint planning, Scrum Master should make sure all the stories has acceptance criteria, and the definition of done has been defined mutually between the developers and the product owner, and also the goal should be set with a clear and mutual understanding between the product owner and developers. So each and every team member should clearly understand what is the goal of the sprint. So what it takes for them to reach and give their commitments towards the goal. So this will be the overall Scrum Master's roles and responsibilities regarding a sprint planning meeting.